So Deb asked me if I would do a little bit of talking today, and I realized that I've never really talked to you guys about my trip up Mount Kilimanjaro. So I learned a ton on this trip. First of all, you have to know that I don't like hiking. So why I decided this was a good plan, I don't know. But for my 40th and my dad's 65th, we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And so I started about a year in advance of trying to do some training. I was living in Cambodia. Cambodia is at negative sea level. And I'm going to train to walk up a mountain that is 1,900 and some odd feet. I do 19,340 feet, that's what it is.
19,000.
Yeah, so it is, at the top, it is the level of base camp for Everest.
Yeah.
That's where they start.
what?
That's where they start climbing Mount Everest.
Oh, okay.
And when you get to the top, you have the equivalent of one lung. That's how hard breathing is when you get all the way up there. All right, then let's move to, okay, so here's the mountain. Kilimanjaro is the tallest standalone mountain in the world. So it's not in a range, it's just a mountain. And you're in Africa, and Africa's fairly flat, and then there's this mountain that just sticks up. And way back in the early 1900s, the missionaries came back and said, there's snow on top of this mountain in Africa, and they all said, you guys have been smoking the weed. You guys don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, no, it's actually 3 degrees south of the equator. So, I mean, it's almost sitting right on the equator. And there's they're losing more and more of it every year, but there was a glacier up there. It's that high up. So it's really a beautiful mountain. We're about halfway up when you see this picture. Go to the next slide.
What's the temperature?
No.
Is it cold?
It is.
Okay.
It is. I mean, it's snow.
Or this one.
No, actually, I wanted the other one, but it didn't put in the words, huh? All right, well, somebody look up Luke 24, 13 to 17. In either the Message or the New Living. Those were the two translations that I really liked what it said. Since everybody's using the Bible app, we can flip through those versions rather quickly.
What did you say, New Living?
New Living or the Message?
I'll do the message.
Okay. 13 to 17.
That same day, 2 of them were walking to the village Emmaus, about 7 miles out of Jerusalem. They were deep in conversation, going over all the things that had happened. In the middle of their talk and questions, Jesus came up and walked along with them, but they were not able to recognize who he was.
17.
He asked, what's this you're discussing so intently as you walk along? They just stood there, long-faced, like they had lost their best friend. Then one of them, his name was Cleopas,
You can stop. You can stop right there.
Okay.
All right. Can you read it? Melissa?
Sure. That same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were walking to the village of, what is that?
Emmaus.
Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked along, they were talking about everything that happened. As they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them, but God kept them from recognizing him. He asked them, what are you discussing so intently as you walk along? They stopped short, sadness written across their faces. Then one of them replied, you must be the only person in Jerusalem who has not heard about all the things that have happened here the last few days.
All right. So, obviously 7 miles is an important fact because it was in every account that I read. Sometimes they're like, they were just a ways from there. I don't know about you guys, but it takes me about 20 minutes to walk a mile. So that's like 2 hours and almost 2.5 hours for me into this process. I think I'd be done talking. I don't know. But the thing is they're talking intently and they're discussing and they're questioning with each other what's been going on. And you guys know that I really like Ruth Haley Barton. And I was actually listening to her podcast she's talking about this because she's talking about community. And she says the road to Emmaus they're in what's called the liminal space. Has anybody ever heard that term, liminal? Liminal means You're beyond now, but you're not to next. And I think that's where our ministry is. We're beyond now, but we're not quite to the next. So we're in this space that's kind of uncomfortable because nothing's kind of, they're in a space where Jesus has died, so what they knew ended, and what Jesus has been telling them's coming hasn't come yet. And they're kind of befuddled. They're talking about it, and they're like, well, I don't know, life is disrupted, and I don't know what's going on. Because they're talking intently, they're discussing in earnest. These are some of the words that are used. And Jesus comes and asks them, and they stop and look sad. And they stop and look like they've lost their best friend. Because Jesus is gone, right? And Pentecost has not happened yet. So they're in this in-between space. But I think the great thing is that they're discussing it because they don't know what's next. And they're talking to each other, they're trying to process, right? I'm a verbal processor, I gotta talk things out. And Ruth Haley Barton says, I'm an introvert and I like the one-on-one. And she goes, I'm having to tell you, I'd be kind of ticked that this stranger that I don't know comes up and wants to join my conversation. Because this is an intense conversation. This is an intense conversation, right? They're talking about important things to themselves. They've jumped into this way, and all of a sudden the thing they hoped was going to last for, probably a lifetime has ended abruptly. Even though Jesus kept telling him it was going to end. But, we're not always the best listeners. But they're like, okay. And he says, what are you talking about? And they're like, so they start explaining, how do you not know this? Everybody knows this. Everybody's been around. And they start talking about Jesus was a messenger. He was a prophet. They do never in the context do they say he's God. And then we learn that, later they're like, how could we not know that this was Jesus, right? How was our life not on fire that Jesus was this close to us? Right, because this is the first time we're going to see Jesus after he's died. And they don't even know it because he masks himself to have this conversation. So when we're walking in community, like Patty allowed herself to be in community this morning. First John tells us if we confess to one another, God is gracious and just and will forgive us our sins. But shame and embarrassment and all those things, keep those things inside us because we don't think they're going to be accepted. We think they're going to be judged. And those of us who are persisters, who are judgers, we do it. Whether we want to or not, we do it. Because we have opinions on these things. And I think, how courageous, because I don't know that I'm that courageous, to admit to the things that hold us back. So I'm going to come back to the road to Emmaus. So go to the next slide. So one of the things with Kilimanjaro is Kilimanjaro has 5 climatic zones on this one mountain. It's so big, and it's this standalone mountain, that it has its own weather system. So, like we look at the weather and we go, what's going on in Pratt, what's going on in Greensburg, and what's going on in Hamilton? The towns that are at the base of it have entirely different weather than the mountain does, which is a little weird, So the first zone is the tropical zone. Right, you're in Africa, it's tropical, it's got that dense, lush greenness. And so you can see my dad and I there. And this trail looks beautiful, and we're wearing those, you can see on my dad's legs, those black things are gaiters to keep all the wet and stuff out of your shoes. Except we climbed up this hill and there were red ants and they got underneath those. And so that was not fun because you couldn't get them off fast enough to get those ants off of you. Because every climatic zone has positives and negatives, right? The problem with the tropical zone is it's wet all the time. That's why everything's green, because it's wet. So today I gave you pictures of me and some quotes that I've been kind of wrestling with. And this quote says, if you don't have the time to do what matters, stop doing the things that don't. Just stop doing the things that don't matter. So, with the decision to take this mountain trip, I had to train. I had to start walking around with a backpack. People in Cambodia thought it was hilarious because I'm walking around with a weighted backpack, which I don't have that much stuff in this backpack because we paid a group to carry the big stuff up the mountain. So I've got snacks and rain gear and, water. You'd think I have a ton of stuff on me and a camera. That's important. All right, so this is the beginning. So let's look at our spiritual life. This is the beginning. The beginning is the excitement, isn't it? We've met Jesus. We're ready to go. Let's go. Who needs all this gear? I just want to go. Why do I need training? Why do I need to read the Bible? I mean, I want to read the Bible, but I want to just go tell people that I've met Jesus. Right? We all know new Christians. We probably don't remember as much about ourselves, but we've met new Christians who are just super duper excited. So, this is us. We've just gotten out of the car, and we are ready to take off. So go to the next slide. So this is the next level where we get to that night. And this is forest. So when we take off, I say to our guide, how far are we going today? Because it's like 11 o'clock in the morning. We haven't gotten started really fast because we had to check in at the ranger station and they had to pay all the fees and we had to get to the start point. And in only the way that people in third world countries work, it's kind of like over there. Not real specific. And one of the things I learned about myself is I'm fairly specific, especially with time. And that wasn't a really good answer. But we get to the next level. So we get, the excitement breaks down a little with the Red Ant experience and, and slipping in the mud. And we finally get to our camp and it's dark and we're hungry. And I'm thinking, why did I want to do this? Because maybe this was a little bit of silliness. But we wake up in the morning and we're in the forested section. So you can see it's still green, but it's not quite as wet. It's a little more dry. It's trees like we find in the mountains here. And that quote says, maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you. So you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. So, day 2, I'm having another conversation with my guide. Okay, we have 3 guides. There are 12 of us and we have 3 guides. And I think about 20 porters who are carrying tents and food and water. And they've left. I mean, the porters, like these big skinny black guys, they throw this junk on their head and they take off. We're going, And our guide keeps telling us, you need to eat more because you're burning calories like there's no tomorrow. You got to eat more. And you're eating like pasta and candy and anything with sugar and carbs so you can just get energy, right, to go. And so we have that kind of same conversation. How far are we going today? And we get to where I think he's talking about and we don't stop, and I'm starting to get a little frustrated with this whole guide guy. And he just kind of chuckles. He's done this many times. He goes up the mountain once a month for the 7 months of the season. And sometimes twice. So he does this all the time. He knows exactly where he's going and what's going on. And as you're walking along, you kind of walk single file. You don't really walk with someone. So this is day 2, and day 2 I've kind of thought through most of the junk that's kind of in my head. And I'm starting to get to a point where I'm kind of almost past really anything. And my head's kind of clearing, right? It's all kind of processed, anything that I was dealing with. I have some cards with some scriptures that I'm trying to memorize and thinking I'll work on that. And I'm singing it in my head a little bit and just kind of going with it. And we stop every hour or so and have some more candy, and some water, and just rest up a little bit. And let me tell you, I'm a slow walker because I have short legs, and I was always at the back of the pack. So they always got a lot more rest than I did because they had gotten there and stopped. And I got there, and then they were like, "Okay, let's go." And I'm like, "Wait, I think I just sat down." But that's okay because I'm kind of a steady plodder. I mean, I just kind of go and I kind of keep going along. So next slide. So this is the middle. And you can see it's getting a little colder because I've now got a jacket on, I've got a hat on. And this is my guide. This is one of the guides, Charles, not Charlie, Charles. And this is where this quote came in. You don't need to know where you're going if you know God's leading. So what happens this morning? I say to the guide, and he stops and he goes, "We're not having this conversation again." He said, "Here is the story. I am the guide. I know where we're going. I know what you need. You need to trust me, and your job is to enjoy the journey." And as audible as God has ever talked to me, he said, "That's what I want to do for you." Okay, so my vision has changed. So now I start watching the guide, right? Because I'm interested in what he's doing, and I realize how much he's doing that I wasn't noticing. He takes one of the porters and he sends him that way. Not, we're going this way. He sends him that way. So he's going to meet somebody to get food. Okay, and drop some stuff off. And he's got these porters that are going there. He's talking to the other two guides that are in the back that are making sure everybody's moving along. And he would tell us, "Okay, here we need to rest, and you need to eat more." Every time, eat more. And we kept going, "I'm not hungry." And he's like, "But you're burning like 10,000 calories today, and you need to eat more." I lost almost 15 pounds. And I felt like I was eating constantly. I mean, we're drinking tea with like sugar, my lip is burned all get out because we're using those metal cups and they're hot and it's like burnt the inside of my lip, and I wake up in the morning and I'm like, you're like, Clearly I'm not very experienced in this because there's these two nurses and they moved to Colorado to get ready for this trip. So they were hiking 14ers and they're ready. They have this plastic bag inside their backpack, so if it gets wet, their clothes don't get wet. Hey, that's a good idea. Learned a lot of things from these girls. And I thought, isn't this true in our Christian journey, right? We take off, we think we know, we've read, but we get there and we get alongside people who've really done it. And they say it as an aside. Or if you just watch, because they didn't even say, like, you should put a plastic trash bag inside your backpack, right? Hanging out with Doris Ferguson is kind of like that. Doris kind of just drops bombs. And she doesn't even realize she's done it, and I'm going, holy goodness, that just changed my whole, world perspective. That simple sentence from Doris. So, this is the middle. So if we have stages of our Christian journey, somewhere in the middle we get a little lost with maybe church isn't quite as fun as it used to be. Reading my Bible sometimes is a drudgery. It feels really routine and kind of less exciting. Is that true? Am I the only one? Okay, good. I'm not the only one who thinks that. So, at this point, I had really literally gone beyond anything I could think of. And I had the greatest day with God this day. So I'm watching the guide and I'm putting Jesus there going, okay, he's guiding my life. And, he's got this guy going over here. And another guy comes because the trip we're on, all our guides are trained in a hyperbaric chamber if people get altitude sickness. And they're some of the best trained in first aid. And another group had a problem, so they came and took one of our guides over to help. And he's managing food, and he's deciding where we're stopping in the night, because that night we stopped earlier than we were going to. And he goes, you all seem kind of tired, so we're just going to stop a little earlier. Now, okay, we're Americans, and Americans' productivity is important, right? So I'm viewing going to this mountain and going, boom, here we are at the top. Do you think that's what we did? How do you think we did it? We didn't. We went like this. We went around it and up. Because you have to acclimatize to the elevation. So you can only go so far in a day. So we only had one guy who one night was really having a hard time with the elevation. But we were going at a slow, steady pace. It's not easy, but we were moving at a pretty steady pace, and he would stop us, and we'd move along. Next slide. So then, climate number 4 is the Alpine Desert, or they call it moonscape. It's just like a lot of rocks and maybe a little bit of scrub brush. The older I get, the more I understand that it's okay to live a life others don't understand.
Amen.
And, I used to call it the Jeopardy principle when I was a missionary. If they ask the question, I get to give them the answer. Why are you living in Cambodia? Well, let me tell you about that. I tried to create the situation where they ask the question, because then that means they're really interested. I'm not just spouting information to them. So you can see that these are the tents we're sleeping in, and there is the snow. So for 4 days, I am at the back of the pack. Okay, struggling along, next slide. And then this happens. Life gets hard. And it says, where you are today is no accident. God is using the situation you are in right now to shape you and prepare you for the place He wants to bring you into tomorrow. Trust Him with His plan, even if you don't understand it. Now, one of the reasons you hike Kilimanjaro is because you can hike it. It doesn't take technical climbing, where most other major mountains take technical climbing of some sort. Okay, this person is 5'1.5". See how far her foot is up there? My little leg doesn't do that. I literally had one of the guides pushing on my butt to help me get up there. It was tough. This was the only part we had that was this bad. But we hit a point in our spiritual life where it feels like this, doesn't it? You're standing at the bottom, looking up, going, I'm never gonna get up there because that's hard, and I can't do it. I have never been skinny in my life. Never. As a teenager, I was a little skinnier than this, but not a lot, trust me. So this kind of stuff, pulling my own weight with my arms, just no. I always thought, hey, rock climbing would be really cool. Clearly I don't have the body for that. All right, next one. Fifth day. 6th day. 5 days, 6 days, 1 day. No, 5th day. We hit the snow, and the guide moves me from the back of the pack to the front. And I'm like, why do you want me in the front? He said, because the rest of them need to slow down. For us all to get to the top, you're going to set the pace. And the pace is this. You are so far up and the breathing is so hard that you go one step together. One step together. You're literally moving this slowly. It is really slow. It is agonizingly slow. And then you come up and you kind of hit this plateau and you see this sign. And at that point you're thinking, I want to just run to the sign, and you're going, that isn't going to happen. I will just keel over because I can't breathe. This says, so it tells you here's the meters, 5,895 meters, and it's Uhuru Peak. It says Africa's highest peak point. When have we ever heard the other one? Star Trek fans? Star Trek fans, Lieutenant Uhuru, right? She was the African gal. Anybody know what Uhuru means in Swahili? It means freedom. So this is Freedom Peak. And you know what? Someday we're going to stand with God and we're going to be free at the top of this journey. We're going to be free. So there is a, you can't really see it, but down here, there's a box, there's a metal box, and inside there's a book, and you get to write your name. And it says, I was here. And my only thought that day was, it's like the book of life, and God said, you're here, and your name is here. You get to come into my presence. It's cold. You can tell it's cold. My dad still has his jacket. I don't have that jacket anymore. But this was an amazing experience with my dad. It was not cool that the night we were sleeping in the snow, he had to go to the bathroom and he's like, just don't roll over. And I'm like, dang, you have to get out of the tent to do that.
Yeah, seriously.
This is so uncool. This is so uncool to be a woman sometimes. But it was halfway up the mountain. I realized in my life that I've quit many things. The perfectionist in me, the thinker, persister, perfectionist person, says if I can't do it good, I'm gonna not do it. And I will quit things because I'm not gonna do it good. Halfway up this mountain, I thought, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. But you know, that's not a choice. You don't just get to like step off the side of the screen and go, okay, I'm good. You gotta go down or you gotta go up. I mean, I can sit down and cry, I guess, but you have to continue the journey somehow, so I might as well continue to go up, right? Because it's silly to be halfway there and give up. And God said, you got this because I'm with you. Though I'm with you to the end of the age, right? It says at the end of Matthew. And when Jesus says lo, he means, listen up, I'm telling you something important. That was not the verse that came to my mind. It was Joshua 1:9 when he says, be courageous, for I am with you. Because it took courage. You know, I'm at the back of the pack, and every time the elevation starts going like this, I get further back here. Because again, these stubby little legs don't get as far in each step as some of those tall people do. And next year, I'm going to walk the way of St. James. Okay, again, I don't really like hiking, but I really feel like God's saying he and I are going to go spend some time together. It's 500 miles from St. Jean de Pierre in the base of the French Pyrenees all the way over to Compostela, Spain.
Are you doing that one day?
In 45 days. Which still means 10 miles a day. Okay. And some days are more and some days are less. It depends on how far the cities are apart, where you can get a place to stay, and you know, there's lots of factors involved. But I'm on this board on Facebook about the slow strollers, and I'm like, this is where I need to belong because I'm in the slow category. My dad wanted to do this, and he started training, and he said, I can't keep that kind of pace. I've just hit that point in my life where that is not feasible for me. And I said, but you could come and do the last couple days. You can't do it for 45 days, but maybe you can do it for 5 days. So I'm still trying to convince him into that. He's 78 years old now. Wow. And in particularly good health, so. But there's something about a pilgrimage. We don't tend to use those words today. In the old time in Christianity, people went on pilgrimages a lot. And this pilgrimage in the way has been around, I think, 600-700 years. People have been making their way to Compostela because it was supposed to be the place where James is buried. And there's a statue of him in the cathedral, and there's a spot where it's very warm where everybody puts their hand in. It's become popular since the movie a couple years ago with Emilio Estevez, if you guys ever saw the movie The Way.
I've seen that movie.
So, and the reason that I want to do it not because I love walking, because I don't. It's because there's a certain point when you're walking and you're away from social media and you're kind of in this routine that you get to the end of yourself. And I think when you get to the end of yourself, it's when God gets to be present. Because I've stopped thinking about all the cares of life, because on this journey, what you really do is you get up in the morning and you walk for many hours, stopping for lunch, seeing, sightseeing, doing some things, but then you get to wherever you're going to stay. You take a shower, you wash the clothes you wore today, and you put on the clothes you're going to wear tomorrow, get something to eat, go to sleep, get up, and kind of repeat. So you've let a lot of the world go. Right? You don't have to make a lot of clothing choices because you're carrying as little as you can get away with. You've really minimized down to the very core. And I kind of look at it and think it's probably the closest we could get to what the Desert Fathers and those guys did. They had this kind of repetitive life. They did the kind of same things over and over every day. In the modern world, it's a little harder to kind of get that awayness. Because God was as audible as he's ever been to me on this trip. It changed my life. I thought I was done as a missionary. I'd been a missionary for 6 years. And Cambodia was too much. It was all just a lot. And I said, I need a break. And I think they were all pretty sure I wasn't coming back. And I took a 3-month sabbatical. I did this at the very beginning. Then I traveled around in Africa, saw some great game, and did various things. And 11 weeks into it, I hadn't really thought about Cambodia, and I thought, I guess I'm done. And week 12, as I was flying back to Thailand to meet my parents, God said, you're not done. That was just a rest you needed to start again. And I went and spent some time with my parents, and I went back and I said, let's go. Let's go. I've gotten better about self-care since then. And I know I just preached this to you guys because it's so important. Go to the next slide. Slow down. Happiness is trying to catch you. We live such busy lives. And when I read that, I think God's trying to catch you. We're trying to do so much for God that sometimes he's not in the equation. I'm truly where Charlie Brown is up here. I'm at a place in my life where peace is a priority. I make deliberate life choices to protect my mental, emotional, and spiritual state. And guess what? It is deliberate choices. It's deliberate choices. There was another quote that I read that said, I choose to say no because I don't want to be busy all the time. Because America has glorified the word busy.
Last part of that, okay. Make deliberate choices to
Protect my mental, emotional, and spiritual state. So here's what I want you guys to think about for a second. In your mind, is there a picture, and it could be a literal picture or just a picture in your mind, where when you think about it, it says, this is happy for me? Do you guys have that? Like my sister during the summer goes to the beach, and every Friday I see a picture on my Facebook page of her painted toenails in the sand, and she says, I'm in my happy place, because she loves being at the beach. So if you ask her where she's happy, she says, I'm happy at the beach. I like the sun, I like the kids running around, I like jumping in the water. Okay, the water in California is not that warm. Just saying. So do you have a picture in your own mind of what that happy place looks like for you? Where you think, when I think of that, I just smile, and I mean, people go, what is there an inside joke that I'm missing? Because you're just happy. Do you have that, everybody? That's mine. Because I'm at this place called the Giraffe House in Kenya, And we're on the second story because they're tall. And the guy says, he says, here, just put your back to the railing and put the food right here. And she'll come over your shoulder. And he says to my dad, get ready. And for me, that's the most genuine laugh I've ever seen a picture of. I love to laugh. And I thought, isn't God's creation amazing? This animal is huge. I also have a picture where I put a piece of the food in my mouth, and this giraffe just went all the way up my face. And it's this big gray tongue that feels like a cat. So it was less than pleasant. But I did it, and it was fun, because you're in the moment, and you kind of got to... And I think that's how God gets us. He gets us in the moment, and we're willing to try crazy things. And he says, I'm with you, let's go do this. I come across as a very serious person because that rebel in me is this big. But every once in a while it busts out and it has a lot of fun. I was at Summit a few years ago. Summit is a friends gathering, and it was New Year's Eve, and they're like, what have you been drinking? I'm like, I'm just having a great time. Aren't you guys having fun? And I'm wearing glasses, and I was doing my Cambodian karaoke dance.
Dance?
And I don't do that in public anymore because of iPhones, because they took a picture of it.
Show and tell.
You can't set that without doing it.
Show and tell.
But the point of this picture is, in my mind, when I remember a happy time, I go to that and think, I can't be that all the time, but I can be that more often than I am. And how do I get there? It's my choice. It really is. I listened to a podcast by Ruth Haley Barton called Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership, and I would highly recommend it. And she said, I told Deb, second episode, the guy asked her a question, and she goes, well, we do the spiritual disciplines so that we will let go and let God be in control. And I said, I don't think that's why I do that. I think maybe that's why I should do it, but I don't think that's actually why, because I feel good when I get to check off. The sister says, whoop, read my Bible today. Whoop, spent some time in prayer, spent some time in meditation, whatever, I get to check all those things off, and I go, yeah, I'm cool today. And then the other days when I don't do that, I think, oh, you suck. Right? I mean, oh man, you don't have it together. But if the goal is to let go of me being in control and letting God be in control, you get into an uncomfortable place. Anybody ever been there? Where you're like, I'm not sure what's going on. I've been in a place for probably the last 5 years where church is not fun. And going to church has been a struggle. And after our last day of worship, well, that was December because I wasn't here in the January one, I said, if church was like that, I'd go to church every day. But that's not what church is like. I also struggle as a missionary of feeling at home places. I don't feel like I fit really anywhere. I can fit in Cambodia, I can fit here, but I don't entirely fit here. I don't think like people think here. And I can go to Cambodia and I fit there, but I don't entirely fit there either. And then I go to California where I grew up, and it's easy, but I don't entirely fit there either, because they live a pace of life that I don't want to live. It was intentional that I didn't go live there after I came back from Cambodia, because they don't even glorify the word busy. They like make it a new award, like an Academy Award if you're busy. I mean, they just go and go and go, and everything's about me. And I thought, I don't want to be there, because you know why? We get sucked in. Don't we? We watch kids. We work with kids, and kids get sucked in by their friends. And they get sucked into good things, and they get sucked into bad things because of the influence of their friends. And we're trying to combat that, right? I mean, we're trying to offer space for them to come that is a good place to hang out. Not in the back alley where everybody's pulling the cigarettes out to smoke. But pretty soon it's going to be in the book nook at the thrift store where they can hang out on a beanbag and have a place to be. Because they just need a place to be. Because guess what God wants from us? He doesn't want us to do, He wants us to be. I sent Deb a quote last night that said, more happens in God's presence than by our efforts.
Amen.
So when we spend time with God, it comes back in tremendous response. I've said this, Deb said this, this ministry is getting ready to take off in ways that we don't even know. We're in that liminal space. We're in that the now has ended, at the not yet hasn't totally begun. And that's why it's even more important for us to spend time with God and be with Him. You know, the old saying is, we're not human doings, we are human beings. Do you guys find being with God easy? Not always.
It's too quiet.
It's very convicting, isn't it? Oh, shoot. I sat here and I thought, as Patty's doing her thing, and, you know, unfortunately I'm a person, so I reflected back to myself, and I think, I probably could have been skinnier my whole life. What was I trying to fill up with food? What void was I trying to fill up with food? And I've never really had that thought before, so that was a new one. And I thought, okay, God, obviously we need to talk about this, because, dang.
Conviction.
Hospitality is one of my things, and food is one of those things. Nope, the table back here. And that's okay, but that doesn't mean I have to eat it all. Right? So as we walk, I don't know, I might have told you guys this story. When I was in Cambodia, I learned, because I'm a thinker, I sit and I analyze things, and I watch them, and I try to figure out what's going on. So one day, I'm going to do ministry, and I spent 3 months in this seaside town called Kampot. And so I'm meeting the people, and I'm learning the people, because the missionaries are on vacation. So I'm kind of just filling in. I'm going to do the regular Bible studies, but I'm still trying just to get to know the people, right? And I've met them before, because they've been at various leadership events and things that we've hosted. But this one village, I'd have to drive about 20 minutes, and then we'd have to get out of the car and walk for a good 15 minutes. At least a kilometer, probably a kilometer and a half, through these rice fields to get to where their village was. There was a way to get there around the back, but during rainy season, there was so muddy we couldn't get there. So I was always like, you know, back to I don't really like the hiking thing. I'm like, gosh, why can't we find a better road to this village? So I have a bunch of Cambodians with me. So I did 3 things when I lived in Cambodia. I was a homeschool teacher for 2 years. So I have 2 little boys that I was my favorite role ever as a missionary was to be the missionary aunt. I was the cool aunt to all the kids whose relatives were not in Cambodia. They laughed at me one day. I called a friend of mine, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm hanging out with the boys today." She goes, "You're talking to me?" And I said, "Oh yeah, well, I picked them all up. We went to lunch. We had ice cream, and now they're playing video games, and I'm walking around the mall. And then when they're done, we'll go do something else. Then I'll take them home, and they'll think it was the best day ever." I said, "Because I don't have to play the video games with them. I'm not good at it, and they don't want me to bog down their whole game playing time. But just the process of picking them up and choosing to spend time with them." So I did that for 2 years, because I can stay ahead of a 3rd and a 5th grader and a 4th and a 6th grader, but you start getting in junior high, and it's like, oh shoot, you gotta actually know stuff. You have to know stuff like science and upper level math. So I always call myself the missionary that God said I can laugh at the rules. I didn't go to Bible college. I don't have a degree in Bible. I have a degree in public administration, in political science. I failed out of college at one point. I've traveled the world, so I've done all these things, but none of that was a mission agency's path to becoming a missionary. So they needed a homeschool teacher. I went as a homeschool teacher. I was there for 2 months, and I had a youth group started, and we were playing around. And then I said, okay, I feel like God's calling me to do this. And they said, so do you find it easy to learn language? No. How much Bible background do you have? I think I took a class in college. I've been a Christian since I was 10, and I'm 35 at this point, so it's not, it's not a young, so I'm not 20. And they said, gosh, we don't know what to do, because you don't fit any of the rules, but all your teammates say you're called. So that's why I say God laughs at the rules. He goes, I can get around you guys' rules. So I took some correspondence courses from Wheaton, and they called that good. And I started teaching TEE. Anybody know what that is? It's Theological Education by Extension. So when you get into rural communities, you don't want to send these guys off to Bible college, because then they don't come back to the rural community. So instead you teach theological education in the rural community. And then, so we would pull the leaders together and then send them back out to teach. So they were really literally teaching the week we were teaching, right behind us. And for any Bible school, teaching at that intense level is considered credit worthy, because we did Matthew in 6 books. I mean, we took Matthew down to the core of Matthew. And it was great. I mean, I learned lots of things. You learn that God's funny about things. One day I was going up to this is a side, I'll come back. I was going up, and we had a village that was a half a kilometer from the Thai border. And it would literally take me almost 4 hours to drive up there. And so usually I was usually just the driver. I was taking Cambodians who were doing most of the ministry work. We'd get there, I'd lay down in the hammock and take a nap, because I was tired after 4 hours of driving. And I would usually wake up because I'd be like, and they'd all laugh. I think I was hilarious over there in the corner. And so we went to go visit this one guy, and we get to his house, and he's not there. And they said, he's working. Really? Last time I was here, he didn't have a job. What's he doing? And so they use some word that I've never heard of in Khmer. And I'm like, I don't know that word. So they're sitting there, and they're thinking, and they're trying to think how to explain to me. And they said, in the Bible, when Mary and Joseph have to go to that other town so they can count the people, that's what he's doing. I said, so he's taking a census. And they said, yeah, that's it. Never thought that the Bible would help me understand what somebody was doing for a working job. So God's funny that way. So, homeschool teacher, I move over, I spend 1.5 years. I've already been there 1.5 years. Another 1.5 years in language school, because Khmer is hard. In Wycliffe's hierarchy of languages, it's in the top tier of difficult languages, up there with like Navajo, and it's hard. Because it doesn't have ABCs, it has its own whole scripted language. And there's 88 letters. So I'm learning to read, write, and speak all at the same time. And they have very little punctuation, so it just is all squished together, and you're like, but can't you just put spaces between the words so I know where the word ends? Because you only have words like we do that are coupled together is, right, 3 little words together. So you could read that as to get her, and you're going, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, together, and I would do that, and come on, I'd be reading along. I'm so confused. So once I'm finally done with my 1.5 years of language, and I'm like, let's go! I gotta get out there and do something. The Friends approach to missions really different than a lot of people did. I did not go there with this is what I'm going to do. I went there and I studied language for 1.5 years, and Gary said, God will bring your ministry to you. And the people you meet and the situations you encounter, it will develop. And he said, we're not going to move faster than God does on this one. Does God move fast? No. No. Because he says you need to meet those specific people, and there's a timing involved. My pastor in Cambodia, she used to say, I know one thing. God's timing is perfect, and my watch runs fast. All the time. So, I had already gotten a youth group started, so I started this National Youth Council. So I was developing youth leadership, and so like I said, I was the driver a lot. Some of the best times I've ever had with young adults was in the car on a 2-hour drive to somewhere. Because on a 2-hour drive, 20 minutes in, you've talked about family, you've talked about the weather, you've talked about school. Now you got to talk about something because you've gotten past the peripheral, right? So I do leadership development, and then I start doing translation work. God's really different when you read the Bible in a different language. You get insight into God from a different perspective. Now, Asians are a collective community, and we're an individualistic society. We live in the good, better, best world. They live in a good, bad world. They live in a world where the Spirit is right here. Most Americans live in the world where the Spirit's somewhere way up there, really far, not close. They ascribe way too much to spirits, in my opinion, and we ascribe not nearly enough. But one of the things I've learned in life is we don't know how to hold those tensions. We have to fall to one side or the other. Truth versus grace, right? Straddling that fence is really hard. We weigh it on each individual case. And we try to make a judgment. And God says, but in my world, I can just sit right there on that fence and be okay. Right? When you get around a group of Asians, what takes a long time to learn is we're in this room and everybody will speak for themselves. And if there was 10 Asians in here, one person would speak representing all of them. All the rest of them won't speak. And so we discount everybody else and say, well, it's just that one guy. He's the only one who thinks that because nobody else said anything different. But he's really all of those guys. And we go, oh, shoot. They make decisions on what's good for the group, not what's good for me. Because sometimes when I'm the oldest, then I make decisions for the group, which tend to be good for me. So how do these things play out in the Bible? How do they understand the Bible? Same Bible we read. So we come at it this individualistic way, they come at it in a community way. So way back to my story, we've pulled up to this road, and the village is way over there. And I have a missionary from Guatemala, myself, and 5 of my youth council guys with me, which are 2 girls and 3 guys. And so I'm walking up the car, and I look over, and I've been out to this village a number of times, and I noticed that all the Cambodians have taken off their shoes and rolled up their pants. So I think, well, they live here, they must know something. So I take off my shoes, which shoes are flip-flops, so I mean, it's not like, but they're all holding their shoes, and they've rolled up their pants. And Nicholas has on like loafer shoes, not even like tennis shoes, and socks, and so we take off. Well, again, I'm the slow walker, right? So I tend to be toward the back, and I'm watching, and we're walking on, you guys ever seen rice fields up close? They dig out rice fields, so they have these berms on the top, so they keep water in them, because rice needs water to grow. So they have these built-up mounds. Well, the dirt is rather clayish, so you're walking along, and it's a little slippery. And my thinking is, my shoes would do better. They have this amazing ability with their toes to kind of dig in, and they never slip and slide. So I'm watching them, and I'm watching Nicholas. And Nicholas is watching very intently to the ground because he's wearing shoes, and he's very carefully deciding where to walk. All right, so the whole journey, he's looking like this. And he's picking his, his footsteps very carefully. I'm kind of enjoying this. I'm not working quite so hard at it. I've got my bare feet and I'm kind of walking like a duck so that I can kind of, I've never had the best balance, so this is not always a good thing for me. And we get all the way to the house. So what happens when we get to the house? The house owner walks us all over and says, here's water to wash your feet. Where else do we see that? In the Bible, there's always water to wash your feet because your feet are dirty from the journey. So the Cambodians wash their feet, roll down their pants, put their shoes over there because we're going in the house. You don't wear your shoes in the house. Boom, they're good. 2 minutes, they're on. Nicholas is washing out his shoes. He's pulled off his socks because he's got his socks muddy and his pants are muddy. And I thought, And again, God said to me as audibly as he's ever said, your job is to enjoy the journey. You get too caught in this instead of watching the fun of these kids together, walking and joking and talking and singing, whatever they're doing. And we all got to the same place, but we did not have the same journey getting there. Nicholas looked down the entire time. They looked where they were going. And when the first person poked their head out of the house, they were excited and they're waving and saying hi, and they're excited that they're coming. And Nicholas didn't participate in that because he wasn't looking for that. And I thought to myself recently, this is the busy. I'm so focused on my own feet, but I don't get to enjoy what's going on around me. This is the busy. How do I choose not to do that? Well, I choose to learn from people who know more than me. And that might mean they're 10, but they know more than me because guess what? They grew up there. And the little girls running around like there's nothing going on. And I'm walking still a little gingerly because I swear they have an entire callus on the bottom of their foot. They found the bottom of my feet fascinating because I have calluses and spots, and their feet don't do that. But they can play soccer on like rubble. And I'm going, yeah! Forget it. And then they'd say, hey, come plant rice with us. I'm like, you mean like bend over and put it in the ground? I said, oh no, you don't want me to do that. And they're like, you can do it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna say 6 minutes and then I'm gonna be done. My legs are going to be burning, my back's gonna be sore, and it's not gonna be pretty. So instead I would go sit with the ladies in the village, the older ladies, because I'm like, I'm not as young as you guys. And I would talk to the old ladies in the village. And I learned the stories of Cambodia. They had fun. I got to be in community over here. And at Christmas time, I would go sit with those same ladies and we'd make curry. And they taught me how to cook. And they taught me how to entertain. Because the job of a missionary, and I think the job of any Christian, is to be a learner. I read Psalm 116 and said, and God listened to me. Are we listening to the people around us? Or are we trying to fix them? I'm going to end on this thought. Is lunch coming soon? I'm going to end on this thought. Ruth Haley Barton says, your mission comes out of the transformation of your life. Okay, so that was pretty much that's how the missionaries did it, right? I showed up, I learned the language, I was transitioning into understanding the culture, and through that, my mission was revealed, I'll say, because it didn't come all at one time. It was slowly revealed. And then she continues to say that your mission is fulfilled through the continuing transformation of your life. Because if we don't continue to develop ourselves and to spend that time learning, being open to listen, we will start to burn out. Because it's in that time we spend with God that we're invigorated, we're given the tools to move to that next level of ministry. So your mission comes out of transformation, and the maintenance of that mission comes through the continuing maintenance of you transforming your life with Christ. So we have 5 levels in the mountain. There's probably 100 phases of your life, but it's a metaphor for your life. You move from this one to that one to that one to that one. Well, guess what? It got harder at each one. It didn't get easier. Because being a Christian is a daily decision. Every day I decide if I'm going to read my Bible, if I'm going to seek God, if I'm going to pray about that, or if I'm going to do my own thing. And I hope that I choose that more days than I don't. In all reality. I hope that I see the opportunities that God gives me to keep transforming myself so that I continue to see what He's putting in front of me. Because I don't get to see it when I'm not looking for it. We're going to stop there. Caitlin's going to go get some pizza.
Would you pray for us?
Absolutely. Pray what by that. Thank you so much for today. That you are the preciousness that fuels my life to get out of bed every morning. Lord, that in the rough times I feel you more often than the good times. Lord, it is my desire, and I think it is the desire of each person in here, that they want to see you more clearly, to love you more dearly, and to follow you more nearly every day of their life. Lord, I pray that the people in this room, that you would be exuded through them, that kids draw near and say, what is different about you? And that they have the answer to share it. Lord, we bless this food that you're preparing for us and our time around the table, that this might just be a wonderful time of fellowship. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Michelle.
So, ooey is a great word. We don't have a literal English translation for it. When you talk to relatives and people that are special in your life, you call them ooey. So my friend Mian, I would say, Mian, ooey! And that says to everybody that Mian is a special person in my life. And they know that. And so when you say, pray by that means God.
That's all.
Ooey, God is precious in my life.